You can listen to The Professional Left wherever you get your podcasts, on Netroots Radio, or at our website, proleftpod.com, where you can also contribute to this podcast. There is a PayPal button at our website, or you can mail us a letter and or contribution at P.O. Box 9133, Springfield, Illinois, 62791.
This is the podcast for the week of September 1st, 2023. It's not safe for work.
Recorded live from the Cornfield Resistance, where, unlike Jesse Waters, we don't chat up our garbage man for his political opinions, and we have not met a single black person who thinks mug shots are cool. It's The Professional Left with Driftglass and Blue Gal.
Yeah, Jesse Waters made that up like he makes up a lot of stuff.
Yeah, he's the worst.
A liar.
He's really, they keep devolving an inch at a time or a foot at a time. I mean, and he was the thing that Bill O'Reilly used to dispatch to jump at people in a crowd.
Jump on old Asian ladies.
Yeah.
In Chinatown.
He's a smirking racist asshole who knows exactly what his audience wants to hear and what they want to hear.
He knows what he's getting paid to do by Fox. Yes, absolutely.
And I don't know that he has any knowledge of who picks up his garbage. I'm sure he treats his interns like garbage. And so maybe he's referring to them. But no, Jesse Waters is making up a story because that's what Jesse Waters does. And it's about a black person.
You have to make an excuse for the mugshot because the mugshot is visual, doesn't require a lot of thinking. And so they have to literally groom their audience to think the mugshot, he looks hard. He looks cool. I mean, I'm 100% heterosexual, but I'm telling you, he's so hot, I would jump his bones right now.
And that's and he's riffing off of Dinesh D'Souza saying that because when you look for someone to tell you what's going on in the hearts and minds of the black community in America, where else would you turn but Dinesh fucking D'Souza? But that's the clowns. Those are the clowns they have feeding the base this bullshit, which is why they are unsalvageably ineducable garbage people. Anyway.
Well, happy 740th episode, Driftglass.
That's a lot of episodes, Blue.
That's a lot of episodes. That doesn't count Science Fiction University either, so that's kind of a lot.
Boy, are my arms tired. That's all I can say.
Well, we have been kind of overloaded this month because I've had to go to the doctor twice a week,
Twice a week, yeah.
For treatment, and everything's fine. It's going as expected. I'm not complaining, except that it eats up more time than a lot of other things would have used. So, but we want to start today because it has been a difficult week for a lot of people and a lot of things going on around the world. So we want to start with some good news.
Okay.
And it's been quite a week of good news coming out of the offices of Joe Biden and J.B. Pritzker. Does J.B. stand for Joe Biden?
It does. But let's just say all the JBs in politics currently are doing just fine.
Most of them are doing pretty well.
Yeah.
And so Joe Biden, this is the good news out of Joe Biden's office. Biden celebrated with his Vice President Kamala Harris Women's Equality Day and noted that President Biden has appointed more black women as circuit court judges than all other presidents combined.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Now, I haven't consulted with Jesse Waters about what he thinks about that.
Let's not mess up our good news with Jesse Waters.
Let's
leave him out of it.
Fair enough.
President Biden and the First Lady visited students and educators at the Elliott Hine Middle School in Washington, D.C. A lot of middle schoolers have a lot of attitude.
Yeah, I remember that.
There was a lot of cheering and is it really him? Excitement in that classroom, and it was so fun, and a lot of very cute videos came out of that. And Dr. Jill Biden, the First Lady, was there also praising the teachers and telling the students that you can go to your teacher for help because your teacher really cares about you.
It's true.
And the teacher said, yes, we really do. About 3.6 million additional workers will be entitled to overtime pay under a new proposal from the Biden administration. The proposed rule will lift the cutoff for the extra earnings from its current level of $35,568 to $55,000 annually. That's a big deal, particularly for middle management women who work extra hours a lot. I can attest to that.
This does not apply to us. I wish it did, but my wife just works me like crazy. But since I'm in senior,
write that script.
Yeah, get him. How many pages is it? Oh, no. We're not talking about David Brooks again with
David Brooks. 4 pages on David Brooks. Rip.
But I'm senior management, so I don't get overtime. So
no, he doesn't get overtime. He just has to go back to his trailer and sulk.
I'm not gonna
the biggest good news: the Biden administration named the first 10 medicines that will be subject to price negotiations between Medicare and pharmaceutical companies under the Inflation Reduction Act. The medications are some of the most widely used and costliest drugs older Americans use for heart disease, diabetes, cancer, and autoimmune conditions. And they're expensive because there are ads for those drugs all the time on television.
Yeah. On YouTube, too, by the way.
Yeah, and on YouTube. Oh, man.
They're everywhere.
Medicare spent $50.5 billion on the drugs last year, on those 10 drugs, and the negotiations are projected to save the government, the taxpayer, an estimated $98.5 billion over 10 years. But on the other hand, Driftglass, Common Dreams reports that Senator Marsha Blackburn of Tennessee wrote on social media, the Inflation Reduction Act's socialist drug price controls will stunt the development of life-saving treatments and cures while granting the government blah, blah, blah. She was invoking the well-worn and misleading narrative that curbing medicine costs stifles innovation. It actually stifles stock buybacks and CEO compensation.
Yeah.
And advertising, all those ads. I'm really hoping that this curbs those stupid ads on TV with the dancing diabetic, that one in particular.
Is she referring to these socialist drug price controls that every other advanced industrial country on earth uses?
Yes, she is.
Okay.
Yes,
just
she
make
is.
sure I understand that.
But let me explain to you why she did that. Blackburn received $215,500 in campaign donations from pharma and other health product PACs, political action committees, between 2017 and 2022, according to Open Secrets. And this is the line of the week for me. If you remember nothing from this podcast, remember this. State Representative from Tennessee, Gloria Johnson, one of the Tennessee Three, who hopefully is going to unseat Marsha Blackburn in the next election, said this: did a big pharma CEO write these talking points for you on the back of a campaign check?
Bravo.
There was also tragedy this week, as you all know, I'm sure. There was a mass shooting as well as a hurricane in Florida. And the hurricane is still going on. The storm is still going on up the eastern coast of the United States. Our thoughts are with everyone in the wake of that. We have family in the path of that hurricane.
Yes,
so,
we do.
I mean,
Yes, we do.
we're well aware of this. And they're still dealing with the consequences of the fire in Hawaii. There are 1,000 federal officials on the ground in Hawaii. And I have heard complaints about, are we doing enough for Hawaii? Are we doing enough for Hawaii? I've seen that on social media. Don't forget about Hawaii when we're thinking about the hurricane. Like, there's this crazy trend on right-wing and far left-wing social media to say that everything is a zero-sum game. And if if one bad thing happens, you can't do anything about the other bad thing, or that Biden isn't doing enough. And there are 1,000 federal officials on the ground in Hawaii. I've been reading up on this, and they actually sent a couple people from the Veterans Administration to Hawaii because a number of people affected by these fires were veterans, and that was the easiest way to get assistance to that population quickly with no red tape, no problems, because those people are already entitled to all kinds of benefits. So, including travel to hospitals if need be. I mean, there's just all kinds of things they can do very quickly to help with cash assistance, et cetera. And that was the way to do it, was Veterans Administration went, contacted the veterans, and got them help immediately. And Joe Biden very quickly arranged for an advance for a declaration of emergency and all of the federal assistance that goes along with that for Florida in the wake of Hurricane Idalia. And that's just competent government.
Right. Basic competent government.
Basic competent government. Now, before the hurricane hit, Ron DeSantis had the audacity to try to speak at a vigil for the victims of the racist shooting in Jacksonville. The crowd quite correctly booed him for attempting to speak. Ron DeSantis, his governorship is permitless carry plus slaves benefited from slavery. And as local civil rights leader Rodney Hurst said, this hurricane of racism that we've been dealing with in the Jacksonville community is not new.
Yeah.
And so today, Thursday, as we were recording this podcast, this happened. Quote, the Biden administration on Thursday announced that it is proposing a rule to eliminate the so-called gun show loophole, one of the biggest attempts to regulate the sale of firearms in years. And it's interesting. It's almost as if he's a veteran of the Obama administration and that he's not trying to do this through the Congress.
No, because that won't go anywhere.
The administration said that new language in a law passed already last year by Congress after the Uvalde shooting is empowering that administration to take the action, though Second Amendment activists are likely to challenge the move in court. The Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives is proposing a regulation that would essentially say anyone who deals in firearms for profit must get a federal license.
Right.
And to get that license, they must conduct criminal background checks for sales. This is something that Moms Demand Action and other gun safety organizations has been asking and begging for. Background checks, very common sense gun control. And this is regardless of whether these people who deal in firearms for profit sell the guns in brick and mortar stores, gun shows, flea markets, or over the internet. So the new rule will go through the federal rulemaking process rather than through the Congress. And it's not like Biden's doing nothing on guns.
No. And, you and I had an interaction with a gentleman on social media last week, which was very friendly.
Yeah.
And he earnestly wanted to know, why doesn't the Biden administration pass thus and so? Why aren't they doing this and why aren't they doing that? And we had to explain what supermajorities are. And what majorities are and how voting works in the Congress.
Yep.
And he was like, oh, okay, I get it. That's because he was like, well, why can't, Biden is doing 75% of what I want. Why can't I demand more? Why can't I demand 100%? Well, you can, but you contextualize that with the situation in which he finds himself, which is we don't control the House. We really don't control the Senate. As long as Joe Manchin is in there and Kristen Sinema is in there, and there's this stupid idea that you have to have 60 votes to pass everything.
Or as I put it, the raise my pinky finger filibuster. Yeah. Right.
And this person who I took them at their word, really didn't understand how any of that worked.
Yeah.
And really didn't understand.
That's not to criticize that person.
No,
it's not something that everybody understands.
No,
I get it.
Because he didn't follow through with, well, why didn't Joe Biden just will it into existence? Because he's obviously a dictator and he can just do whatever he wants. It's just this guy just didn't understand how the government worked, and we were able to help him with that. But there are people out there who really just don't want to give Biden any credit for anything. Right. So no matter how good things are, he should do more. And if he doesn't, that proves that he's just a corporate blah, blah, blah.
He's a fail. Yep.
Right.
Yep.
Fail. Yep.
Well, I want to switch to J.B. Pritzker.
Oh, yeah.
Joe Biden Pritzker.
Meanwhile, closer to home, literally 2 miles from this house.
2 miles from this house. Our Democratic governor, J.B. Pritzker, had a great week, too. He went to the DuQuoin State Fair. He's been to the Springfield State Fair. That's the real one.
Yeah, yeah.
That's the Illinois State Fair. But there are little state fairs all around, and he went to one.
They're called county fairs.
County fairs, right. DuQuoin County State Fair. He also this week announced a rural mental health care grant program for farm communities to get mental health care services, which is fantastic. He did a bunch of ribbon cuttings, which he loves to do, as Driftglass was saying in our rehearsal, with his gold-plated, diamond-encrusted ribbon-cutting scissors.
Right. And they're brought along on a velvet pillow by a special entourage. Yes.
He loves to open new and expanded businesses throughout Illinois, many of them these days related to green energy, which means there's a state grant to help to open these businesses, and that's why he's there. This is going to make you, I don't know if this is going to make you happy or mad, Driftglass. J.B. Pritzker also helped to open a new regional workforce training and innovation center in Litchfield. Yeah, he's kind of gritting his teeth.
I am very happy to see this.
Yeah.
I would like to have things been done differently for the last 15 years.
Yeah.
And I would like to have had some of the things we did in Chicago when we were innovating like mad have carried through more vigorously.
Yeah, right.
On the other hand, it's great. That's terrific.
It's great.
I'm 100%
Litchfield needs
for it.
this. Litchfield, Illinois definitely needs this. And about that, this is quote, future tradesmen and women can now secure skills and credentials before they even obtain diplomas. That's an investment Illinois is proud to make. Yes, J.B. Pritzker, always proud to make these investments.
You know, JB, if I may offer just one small. You want to say portable, durable industry credentials. I'm not saying that you're incorrect. I'm saying that the whole selling point is these credentials can be moved out of state or to different jobs, and they obtain all the way across. All businesses within a particular sector recognize them as valid.
Oh, I see.
Anyway,
okay.
yeah.
Well, I didn't know that. So
Yeah.
these credentials are not state credentials. They're actually industry credentials, correct? Yeah.
Usually. They're recognized by
if
all
you
the
get
businesses.
your welding certificate or your welding credentials
from the National Welding Association, that you are recognized, et cetera. You get your metalworking stuff, you get your OSHA stuff. They're all recognized across most of the industry. So that's why they're cool. That's why because your high school diploma is not portable. Nobody cares if you graduated from Rich South High School, but they do care that you're carrying around a couple of credentials that show that you know what you're doing and have passed a bunch of tests and won't destroy their equipment.
You can handle welding tools. Yeah, that's very important. And you have safety training in those too, because that's all part of it. Yeah, cool. All right. He also announced, and this is a very big deal. You know, I'm not tired of talking about all the wonderful things happening in Illinois. I don't know about you.
Delighted.
I'm not tired of this. A relaunch, and I'm sure it's relaunched because of COVID. I'm sure that they suspended this because of COVID, but they relaunched the Opening Doors or Abriendo Puertas program. It's designed to aid households who have historically faced steeper barriers in their path toward homeownership, with $6,000 in forgivable assistance for down payment and or closing costs. This latest round of assistance is funded through $20 million in coronavirus, state and local fiscal recovery funds, authorized by the American Rescue Plan Act, and appropriated to the Illinois Housing Department from the Illinois General Assembly. IHDA expects to assist more than 3,000 homebuyers in the state of Illinois. Yay!
That's absolutely wonderful. Yep.
And Governor Pritzker said, every Illinoisan, no matter their race, economic status, or zip code, deserves access to home ownership to build better lives for themselves and their families. And today, I couldn't be prouder. I couldn't be prouder to announce that my administration has reopened IHDA's Opening Doors program, giving families who've been locked out of homeownership the resources and support they need to buy a place they can call their own. And in order to qualify for this $6,000 down payment, which is essentially a grant, it's paid back by the grant over time as you make your mortgage payments. So it is forgivable, but you also have to apply for all of the other programs that you might be eligible for. And there is a process, and there is a homeowner school, and there is training, and there is assistance for filling out all of these mortgage forms, which are a tremendous barrier for a lot of people. Just the process is a tremendous barrier, and there is assistance for that within this program. Yeah. So that's fantastic.
Very similar to Obamacare in that a navigator is part of the funding that will help you navigate the process, because it is complicated, because it is inherently complicated.
Right. And there are many other federal and state programs that you might be eligible for.
Right.
And this is a gateway to help you navigate that and qualify for everything that you're able to qualify for. I want to do a shout out to our Lieutenant Governor, Juliana Stratton. She is a Black woman from Chicago, and she is present at all of these rural ribbon cuttings and announcements for rural health care and rural mental health care, where the audience and the officers and the farmers and everybody up there on the stage, except for her, is white. And representation really, really matters. It really matters that she's there. And oftentimes, Pritzker has put her in charge of bringing together some of these organizations, some of these business organizations and so forth, and heading up some of these councils and so forth, for her to have visibility. And I think sometimes, like in the case of this Opening Doors program, it's going to mean more to the constituency of this program.
It is.
To hear it from Juliana Stratton than to hear it from, generously sized billionaire.
Yeah. Yeah. And
not that we don't love him.
No, we love him to death.
We love him. But this billionaire telling you might be able to buy a house. Juliana Stratton telling you, there's a program where you can buy a house. It makes a difference. It really makes a difference.
And putting your lieutenant governor in rural settings, Black woman from Chicago in rural settings, is very smart, because it does tell people, first of all, she's my person.
Yep.
I sent her there. I trust her to do this. Mm-hmm. Secondly, it lets people see that Chicago urban and rural settings do not need to be at war with each other.
Exactly.
They can get along. I mean, Barack Obama, who's running for president, did a whole tour of Southern Illinois. Mm-hmm. He went to every county. There's a whole story about his, holes in his shoes and his old car beat. And he went everywhere. He was down at every rubber chicken dinner, and he didn't persuade everybody, but he put his face in a lot of VFW halls in Southern Illinois where they absolutely didn't expect this skinny guy with a funny name to show up. And it paid off. It really did pay off. Yeah. And honestly, unless you're, willfully blind or a Republican, never Trump, worrywart, you will notice that President Joe Biden is doing exactly that with his vice president.
Yep.
We've done a whole thing about vice presidents we have known, about the whole thing of why isn't Kamala Harris doing more? And because her job is to be the aide to the president. Her job is to
like every other vice president in history.
Except for Dick Cheney, whose job was to run the country because stumblebum couldn't do it.
And it is the worst job in the world in terms of you're never going to get credit for anything, and you're going to be blamed for not doing enough. And if you try to do anything, then you're ramrodding your power over the president. So,
exactly. Yeah. But it is a matter of putting your lieutenant, putting your vice president, putting the number 2 person in your administration into places where they can be seen and understood and recognized for their accomplishments and advance your agenda. The job of Juliana Stratton is to advance J.B. Pritzker's agenda. She's delighted to do it. They make an excellent team, and I'm glad they do that. But the other thing is, isn't it a shame how Democrats suck at messaging, Blue Gal? I mean, isn't it awful how Democrats are just terrible at messaging? Illinois is the 3rd largest state in the country. Chicago is the 3rd biggest city in the country. And there's all this stuff going on. I don't see it in the national news. I don't see J.B. Pritzker mentioned anywhere in the national news, except all this cool stuff is going on right here in our own backyard. And all this cool stuff is going on in the Biden administration that never gets talked about because that's not the story. The story is, he's old, right? Very, very old. He's very, very, very old. Yeah, I know that. And on the other hand, I can vote for a psychopath who will destroy America. So, you know what? I'm cool with the old guy. Maybe you're not. Maybe you're uncomfortable. Maybe you have a wish list of people you wish were president. So do I. You know who I wish would be president? Iron Man. But that's not going to happen either.
He's a little bit of a psycho, Driftglass. I don't think Iron Man is mentally stable enough to be president.
Don't talk shit about Tony Stark, Blue Gal. He's that's right. He's dead. Oh, never mind. I can't have him. Maybe the Hulk. Hulk would be great. Why not wish for anything? But once you get done with all your wishing and hoping and praying, and wouldn't it be nice if, and scenarios, you get down to the actual choices in front of you. And the actual choices in front of us are the Biden administration, which is doing wonderful things, which demand a whole lot more attention by the national press that it's not getting, and the suicide pact run by a lunatic on the right.
Honest to God.
That's it. Those are your choices. Sorry, those are your choices. No labels is not a choice. No labels is a front organization.
No labels is not a choice. Sorry.
No. Now, for the bad news. Let's get on with an article by Will Bunch in the Philadelphia Inquirer.
And let's be clear. Will Bunch is on Team Professional Left. We appreciate his work.
Absolutely. This
is not a criticism in any way. In fact, he's crying in the wilderness just as we are.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
No. Will Bunch is a fine, upstanding human being, the kindest, bravest, noblest person I've ever met in my entire life.
Okay.
But no, he's one of the people out there who's been right all along, has been writing about stuff all along. And this is not an indictment of him. This is just to point out the fact that, well, let me get on with the headline, which is journalism fails miserably at explaining what is really happening to America. Does anyone who listens to this podcast disagree with that? No, of course not. The slug line under that, momentous week of GOP debate. Trump's arrest gets horse race coverage when the story is not about an election, but authoritarianism. Now, the article is basically recapitulating many, many decades worth of liberal critique of the mainstream media. The entire article, which I urge you to go read, it's all true, it's all very sad, and it is the millionth time it's all been said. Will it change anything? Of course not. But I appreciate the fact that he keeps saying it. Now, Jay Rosen, friend of the podcast, one of our guests on this podcast, promoted it. A lot of others did too. Let me read you a quote from the article, and you make up your own mind. This is from the article, quote, "This weekend, the New York Times' Peter Baker." Don't you just love a sentence that begins, "This weekend, New York Times' Peter Baker." An influential news analyst noted on Twitter X that in 1994, the before time, some 21% of Republicans and 17% of Democrats viewed the other party negatively, which has risen to 62% GOP and 54% Dems. Baker was recommending a story condemning tribalism, when what we are really seeing here is the vitriol of an authoritarian movement and the increasing condemnation from those who are appalled by it. I will now take a brief aside and mention that if you go to the Bulwark, you will hear advertising themselves as, "We don't believe in tribalism." Because tribalism is basically another way of saying both sides do it.
Yep.
It's another way of saying it's just a bunch of kooky people on both sides who are angry with each other for no particularly good reason. Why can't the Jews get along with the Nazis, huh? Why
because they're both in their silos, Driftglass.
They're both in their media silos. Why can't they meet in the middle? It's all this tribalism, those horrible tribalism. And it's so fucking cowardly. And it's so fucking dumb. And it's so toxic. And it's such a hiding place for the worst people in America, the worst cowards in the media. Anyway, Will Bunch goes on. Some of the media's worst avatars of what increasingly feels like hopeless democracy nostalgia are so-called never Trump conservatives, like Kathleen Parker, a Pulitzer Prize-winning columnist now in the Washington Post. It was Parker who famously predicted on the eve of the 2016 election that a victorious Trump would, quote, dress up and behave at state dinners and be funny when called upon, unquote, and show contempt for Vladimir Putin in the most notoriously wrong column of all time. Quote, calm down. We'll be fine no matter who wins. That's what Kathleen Parker wrote, unquote. Jesus Christ.
Define we, Kathleen Parker.
Yeah. Kathleen Parker and her wealthy, connected friends will be fine. Everybody else can go hang. Rather than slowly back into the bushes, Homer Simpson style, Parker is still pining for normalcy, declaring last week that Haley won the Milwaukee debate, quote, poised, precise, and prepared, unquote, as if that mattered in the lion's den of the Fiserv Forum, unquote. Now, I'm going to tell you a little story. I'm going to do a Keith Olbermann. I'm going to tell you a story about Kathleen Parker that I'm sure I've already told before, and you can advance past this story if you wish, but it was about Kathleen Parker, Washington Post writer, back in the before time, back in 2008, I believe, when she was writing about Sarah Palin. Remember Sarah Palin? Kathleen Parker wrote a column about how unfit Sarah Palin was to be vice president. And the GOP base and her readers dropped a fucking house on her.
Yep.
And her next column was, I'm a bitch. I'm a monster. I'm a freak show. I'm a this. I'm a C word. I don't remember all the words, but I'm sure they were foul, and a lot of them were racist, and they were horrible, vicious, derogatory insults. And she said, I wrote this thing about Sarah Palin, and suddenly all these people showed up, and they said these terrible things, and I wrote a column about it. I wrote a post about it, which was, welcome to Liberalville, Kathleen Parker. Yep. This is what your party has been doing for decades, except you have never been the target of it before, so you never gave a shit about it before. The minute you crossed the mob fucking turned on you in a heartbeat. And now you're shocked that the Republican Party is full of fucking Republicans. And here we are all these years later. And Kathleen Parker has not learned a goddamn thing. She's still the same twit that she was before. She's still writing as if those people don't exist. And that somehow, some way, there's a different Republican Party out there full of different people who will respect and admire Nikki Haley's foreign policy bona fides and her poise and precision and preparedness. Because you know what? You know what the Republican base showed in 2016? They admire a woman who is poised and precise and prepared. I believe it was Chuck Todd who said, maybe Hillary Clinton is over-prepared.
Oh, she's over-prepared, Driftglass. Yeah.
But Kathleen Parker does not want to come to terms with the fact that she is a card-carrying member of a fascist party. Mm-hmm. And so she does what Peter Baker does and everybody else does. They just pretend they don't exist. Until the mob comes knocking at her door, she will go right on pretending they don't exist. Then comes this from Washington Post media critic Paul Farhi, which is a response to Will Bunch's column. Quote, I can't do a proper whiny voice, just imply the whininess in my voice. Just once, maybe a columnist could write, the news media is doing a great job about informing Americans about the state of their country. But no, unquote. Jeez. Because what a whiny bitch. What a whiny asshole. And then this one comes from Michael A. Cohen, who specifies on Twitter that he is not Trump's former fixer, but he is a columnist for MSNBC and some kind of author of something, so who knows. Quote, counterpoint, these constant criticisms of the press for allegedly not explaining the danger Trump represents are overwrought and tiresome. Yes, overwrought and tiresome. Boy, do I know how that feels. We've had 3 straight elections that were backlashes to Trump. Please stop with this argument that Americans are too dumb to figure it out, unquote. First of all, Mike, 3 elections in which Trump, let's see, he won one of them, came goddamn close to winning another one, and was somewhat repudiated, but you know what? The Republicans still took the House. So this is still a very narrow thing. So maybe shut up on that regard. Number 2, no one, well, I do occasionally, so that's not fair, but no one is seriously arguing that Americans are too dumb to figure this out. 80 million Americans figured it out, and they voted for Joe Biden in 2020. So there's a third of the country roughly that has figured this shit out and don't need to be told that Donald Trump is a threat. And then there's these 70-something million Americans who are reprogrammable Republican meatbags who cannot be educated or reasoned with or in any way dialogued with in any sort of productive way. They're lost to reason. They're garbage people. You can write them off as a cultural dead loss. Then there's the assholes in the middle who want to believe that it's all tribalism, that it's all 2 tribes shouting at each other, that both sides are equally bad, and those people are the cowards who will run and hide behind someone like Michael Cohen or Kathleen Parker or Peter Baker or Charlie Sykes and pretend that it really doesn't matter. Maybe I'll just vote for no labels because both sides are bad, Blue Gal. Both sides are very, very bad.
Yep.
And before I start swearing too loudly or fall off my soapbox and start foaming at the mouth, I will turn the microphone back over to my lovely wife.
Well, I wanted to just mention that Nikki Haley has a position, Driftglass.
She does.
About Social Security and Medicare. Just everybody realized that Nikki Haley isn't talking to any voters. She's talking to Bloomberg. This is the portion of our campaign calendar where it's the big donor caucus. And so she goes on Bloomberg to say, because big donors want to hear it, cut Social Security and Medicare. And, that's going to help them in some way for some, I guess it's fiscal responsibility is what it is, these bloated programs. Mm-hmm. And Mike Pence doing the same thing. Oh, we have to look at entitlements to balance the budget and have fiscal responsibility. Hey, Mike, how about we undo the Trump tax cuts?
No, what?
No,
what?
No, that no one in that side is mentioning those at all.
No.
But one of the things I thought was really interesting about Nikki Haley, in addition to the fact that she said all of this on Bloomberg where she thought no actual voters would hear her, she said that we should base Social Security on life expectancy.
Yeah.
And everyone on the left pointed out to her who heard this that life expectancy in the United States of America is down due to COVID and, interestingly enough, due to wildfires.
Yep.
That the smoke from wildfires is reducing our life expectancy.
Yeah.
It is like smoking because you are inhaling smoke. And so maybe we can move the Social Security retirement age back to 65 for those of us who got caught in the 67 band of, being born after 1960.
Yeah.
That'd be nice. Yeah. So, we should base it on life expectancy. Haley, Miss Haley, we want you to know. Life expectancy is down. So
I suggested that we base it on political life expectancy.
Political life expectancy, which is 0 for Nikki Haley.
Nikki Haley, your career is already dead, so you're not collecting a dime. Mike Pence, sorry, you too.
Well, isn't it interesting, though, that you said this? She is a George W. Bush Republican.
She absolutely is. She's a W Republican. She's a neocon Republican. And you know what? The base has made very clear they don't like those people. They do not want that anymore. Hate those people.
Yes,
because once you drag that back into the conversation, then you're talking about their responsibility for things that happened in the before time. And the base does not want to hear about the fact that they supported the Iraq War and they supported George Bush and they called us all a bunch of idiots for opposing it. Bad.
Remember when they wore purple Band-Aids to their convention?
Oh, I sure do. Mocking John Kerry, wearing purple Band-Aid. All these same assholes. Speaking of the before time, I did a little thing this week about my bad manners.
I just got to interrupt you for a moment and say, every once in a while, like every 2 or 3 months, someone in the media will wave a massive red flag in front of my husband.
They do. They will. I think it's on purpose.
Gets his Irish up.
Uh-huh.
And this week, I won't say it. I'll let you say it. But
oh, please.
Man, if you wanted to just make Driftglass mad.
Uh-huh.
There's so many elements in this story.
It's I swear there is a trolling campaign. Among certain members of the Never Trump tribe, if you will.
Yeah. Who probably really listen to this podcast.
Oh, I know they do. I know some of them do.
I know how we can make Driftglass freak out.
Well, now, one of these days I'm going to write, I'll put up a graph of how Never Trump podcasts break down in terms of time. Yeah. Because there's always, every one of them is similar. They're all similar in certain ways. There's, Trump is awful, but, liberals are pretty bad too. And they talk shit about the left. And then they talk about how nobody listens to them. And that's the part that I sort of had a moment about, because I was very sternly lectured by my liberal superiors at Liberal Central Command back when Never Trump was just a hashtag on Twitter. And Bill Kristol and all these people were showing up all over television and demanding that Democrats listen to them because Democrats don't realize that things are in trouble. Democracy is in trouble. Like, yeah, we've been telling you this shit for 30 years. And I was lectured sternly by my liberal betters that you don't go around rubbing people's noses in the fact that you were right before they were, that they were wrong, that you told them that they were wrong, and that if they'd fucking listened to you, maybe we wouldn't be in this mess. And
you're being petty and small, Driftglass. Right,
you're being petty and small, and you don't realize democracy's at stake, Driftglass. Democracy is at stake.
And I was all of us have to be allies now, Driftglass.
Right. It is. It profits no one to be that asshole who keeps insisting, we told you so. We told you so. That just drives people away from the Democratic Party, and democracy is at stake. And I kept saying, you know what? I have a readership of about 2,000 people on any given day. Maybe 4 of them comment. And if you really think my little podcast and my little blog in the middle of a cornfield after 18 years of obscurity is suddenly going to be the lever that tips democracy over. Well, bless you for thinking that. My followership doesn't say that. My readership doesn't say that. I have very loyal, beautiful readers. They're wonderful people. They send me wonderful notes, and I appreciate every one of them. But I have no influence over anything. Trust me. But I got lectured and lectured and lectured about how you don't walk around telling people, rubbing their nose in the fact that they were wrong. That doesn't convert anyone. That doesn't persuade anyone. Okay. Message received. Don't walk around being the asshole who says we told you. And then last week there was a podcast with Tim Miller and Charlie Sykes on the Bulwark entitled "We Told You So."
And I saw that and I just went, how long can I hide this from Driftglass? Yeah. Not at all. He's already seen it.
Hide it. Hide it where we hide the booze. No. That won't work either. I know where all the hiding places are. And I just thought, oh, this is a joke. This has got to be a joke. Nope. And it is a feature of every Never Trump podcast. There's a portion of every Never Trump podcast where they all complain about how nobody listened to me, Tom Nichols, back when I warned them in 2017 that this could be a problem, or Charlie Sykes, or Tim Miller, or Steve Schmidt, all the rest of them. And of course, the timeline always ends in a dead brick wall around 2016 because they don't want to hear about anybody who's warning them in like 2014 or 2015 or 2013 or 2010 or 2008, because that blows their whole fucking grift. And their whole grift is, we were the only ones who were right. Everyone else is wrong. That's why we deserve special consideration and seats in the mainstream media. That's why we deserve op-ed columns and permanent colonization of MSNBC. We deserve it because we were right and everybody else was wrong. And so I listened to Tim Miller talk about the agony. I'm quoting him now. The agony takes us back to the very first answer to this question, which is our slow rolling "I told you so." It's like they hate us so much. And for people who don't know, sometimes we just throw out, the anti-antis and people who don't know what we're talking about. But, these are people that really dislike Trump privately, politicians, right-wing commentators, but they hate Never Trumpers worse. I'm now stepping away from his exact quote because they're holding a mirror up to their choices. They're making those people look at what they created, and those people don't want to see it. And this is him again, but it's like if they listened to us in 2015, had they listened to 2016, 27 impeachment, they had so many fucking off-ramps. You know what, Tim? They goddamn well did. And they goddamn well did, going all the way back to Barry fucking Goldwater. But all that time when you were in short pants, you did not want to hear any of this. And again, on and on and on. Democracy's at stake. Why is Driftglass talking this shit? And so I'm just going to shut up. I learned my lesson.
No, you're not.
And then Charlie Sykes comes on and says, are we going to do the T-shirts? Come on, we got to do T-shirts, right? And then they talk about how they're going to monetize this. And they're going to put it on mugs. And they want to have T-shirts say,
they're
never
Trumpers
were right.
We told you so mugs?
Mugs, T-shirts, we told you so with and they mentioned bulwark.com where you could order these things. And we're going to have T-shirts and Charlie Sykes.
I thought you were kidding when we were rehearsing that. I thought that was a joke you had added in.
Nope.
They're really going to do that. You're not making that up.
No, they want to, whether they actually execute on it.
Okay.
Never Trumpers
but this
are
is
lazy
their idea.
people.
They want T-shirts that said, we told you so.
Because Charlie Sykes wants to walk down Main Street in Cedarburg with a big mugshot saying, we told you so, or never Trump from the jump. And that's what they really want. So once again, I must apologize. Because what I intended to do was turn to these wise men of the Never Trump for a lesson in how to comport myself. Because my bad manners, I'm running around doing this terrible thing. So I turned to Tim Miller in earnest and Charlie Sykes in earnest saying, teach me. You're the wise ones. You have all this media coverage. They
blocked you on social media, Driftglass.
Yeah, but I still listen to their podcast. I'm like, teach me, men, teach me, because I have bad manners. I'm a bad liberal because I keep telling people, we told you so. So what do you, and then they turn around and do this. So I'm like, oh crap, I guess I lied to my readership because I put all this stuff in a blog and said, these guys will, don't listen to me. These men will lead us down the straight and narrow path of good behavior. And then they failed me. And then I said, well, okay. What are liberals in this? Where do liberals figure in this calculus? What are liberals' existence? I mean, other than blocking anybody who mentions anything, where do liberals exist in their universe? And if you just take that podcast back one day to the day when Tom Nichols was on, you'll find out that liberals do exist as straw men for Tom Nichols and Charlie Sykes to punch when they get upset. When they're talking about Tom Nichols talking about shamelessness, here I'm going to have to throw some shade at our friends on the left, because I think the emergence of shamelessness actually begins in the kind of moral relativism, of the left, 20, 30 years ago. And that's when I decided.
Unbelievable.
And so, we liberals who were actually right all along don't exist, in fact, in the universe where there are mugs and T-shirts going to be sold at bulwark.com, because that messes up that grift. But we do exist as straw men for our fucking allies who were not supposed to punch us when they start feeling too tribal, too like they're picking sides. So they got to bring on Tom Nichols to kick the shit out of Democrats from 30 years ago. And that's the end of my conversation about my bad manners.
I'm going to get out some corn liquor and calm down.
I'm gonna take some medication, some medicine, honey. Uh-huh.
Hey, Driftglass. Do you remember Doug Logan?
I believe I do.
Doug Logan is the Cyber Ninjas guy in Arizona who took some ballots off to his cabin in the woods in some other state. And
Oh, that guy.
Took a whole lot of money from the state treasury of Arizona to do recounts and found out that Joe Biden had more votes than they originally thought he did, and then kind of disappeared. We didn't know what happened to him. Like, he took all this money and isn't there anymore. Turns out, I don't know if you know this, Driftglass, there's this court case in Georgia where they have 19 co-defendants in a RICO case, including Donald Trump.
I've heard
and
something about this.
And then they have some unindicted co-conspirators, including individual number 25. Guess what? That's Doug Logan, the Cyber Ninjas guy, is an unindicted co-conspirator in Georgia. Then we find out that Doug Logan is also under criminal investigation in Michigan.
Oh, no.
Quote, gaining access to the Georgia Coffee County Elections Office. Among those was Cyber Ninjas CEO Doug Logan, who oversaw the election audit, quote unquote, in Arizona. He's also a target of a Michigan criminal investigation. Same guy, 3 states, conspiracy. As I said, drain the swamp, Driftglass. Yeah, he's in a hell of a lot of trouble. Maybe he'll be the one that flees the country first.
Well, sounds like he needs a good lawyer. I think Giuliani's not doing much. Maybe he could retain him for his
Giuliani still has a law license somewhere.
Here's what you should do. Defame everybody and then drink a lot. Giuliani, well, they don't teach you that in law school, but Giuliani knows that's how you get shit done.
We had our 12th wedding anniversary this month.
We did.
And happy anniversary, Driftglass.
Happy anniversary, darling. Yeah, I was going to quiz my wife on what if she remembered a certain notable media event from 12 years ago.
And I said, our wedding?
Yeah, that was a media event in the liberal
Absolutely.
universe.
We podcasted that day.
We did. And we got many wishes. We got to write up a Daily Kos, So
yeah, we did. Oh, that's right. We did.
I'm surprised Marcos didn't mention it when he was on Meet the Press last week.
On Meet the Press last week. Hey,
we forgot to mention that.
Thank you for mentioning that, because we were home because I'm not able to travel that well right now. Watching Meet the Press Sunday morning.
We were.
And there was Marcos Melitzis giving shit to former North Carolina Governor Pat McCrory about no labels.
Laughing at him.
And laughing at him. And we were very pleased to see that.
We could tell there was a lot of language he wanted to do, a lot of behaviors he wanted to have that he was not able to do because, he's on television.
Now he wants to come back on Meet the Press. I hope they will make him a regular on Meet the Press.
I doubt it. I really doubt it. I think that
it was funny to see Danielle Pletka, former, fossil fuel lobbyist, say, people at my house don't want to vote for Trump, but they also don't want to vote for Biden.
Yeah, she's been on that show a million in her giant square smart girl glasses and her big horse teeth. I don't know where she got that mouth, but it was from Mr. Ed, I guess, was not using it anymore. And she just is awful. And she's there all the time. And they brought on Pat McCrory to talk about the virtues of no labels.
Well, he's on the board of No Labels now because he can't get a job anywhere else. So
and Marco's just laughing at him, going basically, "Fuck you, old man."
Well, and asking the really serious questions about, are you going to be transparent about your funding? And he says, Pat McCrory says, so blah blah blah. MoveOn.org.
Right. Tribalism. Move on. It's so transparent. Well, as you will learn in our news update, which is coming up momentarily, there's more exciting news about no labels. Anyway, 12 years ago, today almost exactly, there was a major media event, which no one remembers because it was Dick Cheney's memoir.
Was published?
Dropped that day.
Just in time for back to school.
Just in time for Christmas and back to school. Yeah, because I thought I'd just bring it up. It doesn't quite warrant a full No Fair Remembering stuff, but there was a time when Dick Cheney's memoir caused news. And that was August 30th, 2011.
Wow.
Upon the book's release, several people quoted in it, such as Secretaries of State Colin Powell and Condoleezza Rice, as well as U.S. Senator John McCain, stated that Cheney did not accurately recount their private conversations and meetings. Made shit up because, Dick Cheney. Now, this is a little quote from a negative review by Washington Post Associate Editor Robert Kaiser. Quote, he, Dick Cheney, never comes to grips with the fact, so frustrating to him, obviously, that Hussein had no weapons of mass destruction. He recounts aspects of his own role in stoking the fires for war, but ignores many of his most famous personal gaffes.
Oh, Lord.
Now, imagine anyone outside of the Washington Post writing that and going, really? We're going to talk about gaffes, war crimes as, gaffes, just little boo-boos. And the frustrating fact that, he lied us into the wrong war and fucked that war up. And that's got to be frustrating to good old Dick. He's got a weak heart. I don't know if you know this. He's got a weak heart. But his daughter, I'm sure, has a bright political future in the Republican Party. On the other hand, before his career as an Iraq war pornographer collapsed and he became a perpetual Newsmax hobgoblin, Victor Davis Hanson was being paid by the Hoover Institution to write crap like this. In mythological terms, the post-9/11 Cheney was no longer a fixer like Odysseus, but became an unyielding Ajax who would rather be right than liked, or rather knew that to be right in Washington, he mostly could not be liked. The more ill and more isolated Cheney became in the Bush administration, the more antithetical he seems to his earlier, more robust and upbeat self. And, the fuck you, Dick Cheney self, that upbeat guy.
Yep.
And the more we should admire him. In the same fashion, we concede respect for the anti-heroes of classical Western films who accept that the help of the community needs in extremis will destroy the rare person who must deliver it. Dick
Lord.
Cheney is the real hero here. That, brought to you free of charge, is a time capsule
disgusting.
from August of 2011. And that's how much, because you know what? Nobody talks about Condoleezza Rice anymore.
Nope.
Nobody talks about John McCain except in passing, because he has passed. Colin Powell also has passed away, and nobody remembers or mentions him. And the Iraq War is just a dim and distant thing that we don't talk about, because that is where everything went nuts. That's the point at which the Republican Party was turned over wholesale to the worst people in America.
Absolutely.
And you and I became America-hating, terrorist-loving surrender monkeys.
Right.
And that's when the liberal blogosphere was born, because we became pariahs for talking truth about the Republican Party, when talking truth about the Republican Party would cost you dearly. Anyway, that's a little blast from the past this week, August 30th, 2011. And now,
never forget that the Republican Party lied us into war.
Yeah, never forget.
It is a complicit mainstream media that let them get away with it.
Yep.
All right, we're going to do a news roundup, Driftglass.
Hat tip to alert listener Walt for this story. He might be a reader as well. I don't know. I get notes from him on both counts. For this story from the Boston Globe, Biden has presided over a factory boom, but in an Ohio town where two are being built, he doesn't get much credit. Quote, Biden can lay a golden egg right here, says one local, and people will still find fault.
Yep. From Vanity Fair, Georgia Republicans say they'll move to remove Fulton County DA Fani Willis from office with a new state law. This is just a ridiculous obstruction of justice. I'm sure most of you are familiar with this story. Brian Kemp has come out against this plan today.
Georgia State Senator Colton Moore?
Yes, I do.
He suggested that a civil war could break out over Trump's prosecution, saying, quote, we've got 19 people who are facing the rest of their life in prison because they spoke out against an election. In a separate interview, Moore called Willis, quote, a domestic threat, unquote.
From the Atlanta Journal-Constitution, 57% of likely Georgia Republican primary voters support Donald Trump. 15% support Ron DeSantis. Trump has a 33-point lead over DeSantis in Georgia among Republicans.
Trump's trial on federal charges that he conspired to overturn the 2020 election loss will start March 4th, 2 years sooner than he requested, and one day before Super Tuesday, when 14 states hold their presidential primaries. U.S. District Judge Tanya Chutkan refused Trump's request to push off the trial until April of 2026, or half past never, saying that this was far beyond what was necessary and that, quote, setting a trial date does not depend and should not depend on the defendant's personal or professional obligations. Amen.
Trump and his 18 co-defendants will be arraigned September 6th in Atlanta on charges that they conspired to overturn the result of the 2020 presidential election in Georgia. At their arraignments, the defendants will formally hear the charges brought against them and enter their pleas. I believe that Trump has already waived his right to appear in person and pleaded not guilty.
Yeah. Meanwhile, Kevin McCarthy said that a Biden impeachment inquiry is, quote, a natural step forward, unquote, when Congress returns from its August recess. God, they are such in the pocket of Donald Trump. They are such his whores. Mm-hmm. McCarthy has reportedly told Republicans he plans to pursue impeachment over claims of financial misconduct involving his son Hunter and plans
to say baseless claims.
Oh, baseless. Yes. Baseless claims, made up shit, stuff that we're going to find. You know what? It's just like the WMDs, Blue Gal. They know where they're at. They're going to find them eventually. Let's not slow down with over details like where things are, what facts are.
Right.
And plans to start the process by the end of September. The White House dismissed McCarthy's remarks as, quote, a crazy exercise rooted not in facts and truth, but partisan shamelessness.
A crackdown on woke coverage is tearing Atlanta magazine apart. The publisher pushed back on their effort to present a modern picture of life in one of the blackest, queerest cities in the South, covering the fact that there are black people and queer people in Atlanta divisive. Now half the staff has quit.
Yeah, well, bless their hearts, man. Hope they open a different magazine, and I'll subscribe to it. The New York Times pitch bot, one of our favorite pitch bots, says, quote, is Tim Scott too gay or not gay enough? Answer, yes.
Or as my mother would say, is there a Mrs. Scott?
Is there a Mrs. Scott? Because there's no Mrs. Graham, and we have a lot of suspicions.
There's no Mrs. Graham. There is a Mrs. Ramaswamy, and boy, his kids are cute. I will say that. We don't bring the kids into it.
Oh.
Ramaswamy's kids are adorable. Mm-hmm. All right. Fox News lies about the body of a dead Marine. From the Washington Post, Pentagon protested false Fox News report about fallen Marine. Emails show the U.S. Marine Corps went up to the highest levels of Fox News. You know, that seems wrong. Like, that should be in reverse.
Yeah, absolutely.
But going up to the highest levels of Fox News last month to challenge a story that falsely claimed a fallen Marine's family had to cover the cost of transporting her remains. Emails obtained by the Washington Post show. Fox quietly amended the digital story and then deleted it from its website, following more complaints from the Marines. It has not corrected the original erroneous report or explained its reasons for removing the article in the month since it was published.
Yeah, we know why it was published. You know exactly
it was published because Donald Trump got arrested, and you got to put something on your website that enrages Republican readers of the Fox News website.
Did you hear what Biden did? Did you? And this is, I'm sure, a bunch of meatheads out there will remember this story as factually true 6 months from now.
Right.
Tennessee State House votes to silence Representative Justin Jones, one of the two Democrats expelled earlier this year. The GOP-controlled Tennessee House of Representatives on Monday voted to silence one of two Democrat members expelled from the chamber earlier this year as the legislature meets for a contentious special session on public safety spurred by a mass shooting at a Nashville school. Representative Justin Jones of Nashville was twice ruled out of order during debate Monday by Speaker of the House Cameron Sexton, automatically triggering a vote to silence Jones for the remainder of the day. The vote passed along party lines, 70-20, and Democrats walked out in protest, which I noted when we were talking about this issue reminds me a whole lot of the Scopes monkey trial.
It does.
In that, you know what? The backwards, hillbilly, Bible drunk, moron court found him guilty.
Right.
And in the eyes of the rest of the world, they brought themselves such shame that a century later people still remember it for being that completely out of line with civilized humanity.
I think it's really important to discuss race in the context of this as well.
Yep.
Because here they're silencing a black man.
Again.
However, who is this black man standing up for? White grieving mothers.
Exactly.
Whose children were killed by a mass murderer, gun nut, in their state. This is a local story. And here are these weeping, grieving white women, mothers, wanting their elected officials to do something about guns so that their children will not have died in vain.
Yep.
I mean, it is as dramatic as the Scopes monkey trial because of the tremendous emotion behind what is going on in, Robert's Rules of Order and the 70-20 dividing line of power in that chamber.
Mm-hmm.
Man.
Well, and this is the second Tennessee story we've touched on today. The first one was Marsha Blackburn.
Marsha Blackburn.
Talking about the socialists want to take the medical stuff and make it impossible to find cures for baldness or whatever. And this dim bulb is the person that the people of the state of Tennessee sent to the Senate.
Right. Well, they're dumb because they're corrupt, and they let the moneyed people tell them, the gun lobby and the pharma lobby tell them what to say.
Yeah. And
that's
the party line vote,
you're bought and paid for.
When your party line vote is 70-20, something is horribly out of whack.
Yeah. Well, that's what the 20% Democratic legislators went out into the hallways.
Yeah.
And started yelling, you guys, pointing to the Gen Z people out there screaming.
Uh-huh. You got to
for
vote.
the Tennessee 3.
You got to
because they're now famous.
Uh-huh.
Okay, folks, you've got to do something. Go register voters. We've got to toss these people out of office. All right. From Politico, Governor Ron DeSantis, he should be impeached for this, rejected some $350 million in federal energy efficiency incentives for Florida homeowners.
Right.
The only governor to block the Inflation Reduction Act energy rebates. Again, let me say this again, for homeowners.
People who own homes.
It's not poor people. This isn't welfare.
And it's
if he wants to be anti-welfare and pro-Republican anti-welfare, this ain't it.
No, and this is for doors and windows and insulation.
And heat pumps and more efficient air conditioning. Yes. If the state of Florida, doesn't apply for the rebates by next August, the law allows the Energy Department to allocate Florida's money to other states. Hello. Over here in Illinois, we'll build housing with it. Come on, we'll put doors and windows. We got doors and windows up here.
Sure, plenty of them.
DeSantis also rejected an additional $3 million in Inflation Reduction Act funding to help the state fight pollution. He vetoed the federal Solar for All program. Solar isn't something they know about in Florida.
No sunshine in Florida.
No sunshine in Florida, the Sunshine State.
It's useless.
He also turned down $24 million in grants from the bipartisan infrastructure law because they don't need infrastructure where the ocean has washed over bridges.
No, don't need that. Don't need any of that because that's all a bunch of woke socialist stuff. And
it's all woke. Yes.
He's absolutely fucking terrified that he's going to have a Chris Christie moment where he's going to have to acknowledge that
Biden helped him out.
Yeah. Helped the state of Florida. The federal government under Joe Biden helped the state of Florida out. And that's a haunting image.
He would rather cut off their legs.
Yeah. Than let his constituents have what they richly deserve. A federal judge ruled that Rudy Giuliani was liable for defaming 2 Georgia election workers when he repeatedly accused them of manipulating ballots while counting votes in Atlanta during the 2020 election.
And then yesterday he defamed them again.
He defamed them again because he can't shut his fucking mouth. America's mayor, people. America's mayor.
This is a sad story. Mitch McConnell again froze during a news conference and was unable to respond for more than 30 seconds after being asked if he would run again for re-election in 4 years. McConnell chuckled and began to answer the question when he abruptly stopped speaking, standing motionless and staring ahead for more than 30 seconds. When an aide stepped in to ask if he'd heard the question, McConnell remained unresponsive. "I'm sorry, you all. We're going to need a minute," winked the aide as she told reporters. In July, McConnell froze and went silent for 19 seconds before being escorted away from the cameras. This is elder abuse.
Absolutely. Yep.
On the part of his staff. And you know how I feel about Mitch McConnell. You know, I've already picked out the blue feather boa that I'm going to wear to his funeral.
Mm-hmm.
That said, this is just elder abuse.
Yep.
On the part of some very well-paid staffers who don't want to lose their jobs.
This is from Politico. As promised, a little story about a group called No Labels, which you might have heard about on this podcast repeatedly over the past 13 years. A 6-figure Donald Trump donor is now a No Labels advisor. Isn't that exciting, Blue Gal?
No.
Shocking news. Shocking. Alan Keene, is heavily involved with the centrist group but previously worked to re-elect Donald Trump. A major Republican donor and one-time financial backer of former President Donald Trump is now a leader in the Florida chapter of No Label's third-party presidential bid. Alan Keene, a Florida-based real estate developer and investor who gave more than $137,000 to Trump-related election entities last cycle, has joined the centrist political group in a leadership role with its Florida chapter. So, Blue Gal, we should do a GoFundMe for
No Labels. Yes.
We're going to need, people, we're going to need $137,000 to buy ourselves onto the board of No Labels and take that thing down from the inside.
We're going to do a $3,700 GoFundMe in September for my health care, because that's how much I have left on my deductible.
Okay, but after that,
you want to raise $137,000 for what?
Let's round up to 140. 140K. That's peanuts to Alan Keene, apparently.
Yeah.
That's the price of admission. They'll get you in the door and on the board of No Labels. Wow. And I just want to be there with my good friend Joe Lieberman and just shoot the shit with him about the good old days. Yeah.
From The Guardian, Donald Trump vows to lock up political enemies if he returns to the White House. There's so much wrong with this story, and I'm sorry I have to read it. Former president tells Glenn Beck, remember Glenn Beck?
Yeah, I sure do.
He would have no choice but to lock up opponents, quote, because they're doing it to us.
Yeah, I think we both need a shower now.
As the Bruce Cockburn song says, this was you, Driftglass, if I had a rocket launcher, I'd make somebody pay.
Yeah. If I had a rocket launcher, I can't sing, but if I could, I would.
Oh, man. Each week we post to our Facebook page and website an internet kitty sent in by you, the listeners. This week's internet kitty is the sweetest dog you ever did see. Fuzzy Bean.
Fuzzy Bean. I like Fuzzy Bean.
Fuzzy Bean is such a sweet dog. And of course, Fuzzy Bean eats freshly poured pet food, our fake sponsor. Whether you serve Pet Store Perfection or Dollar Store Dreck, your pets will sit on the kitchen floor and demand that the food they eat is only freshly poured.
Freshly poured, oh my Lord, it's freshly poured.
And you can visit Fuzzy Bean at our Facebook page or website. What a sweet dog. And you can send your internet kitty, dog, or other pet to us at our email address, proleftpodcast@gmail.com, where you can also write to both of us. Feel free to write us. We do love hearing from you. That email address, proleftpodcast@gmail.com, goes to both of us. Be aware that if you write to us at any of our addresses, we reserve the right to read your email or U.S. Postal Service. Go, Postal Unions. Letter on the air unless you say otherwise. #FireToJoy. Don't forget our gourmet coffee guideline. If you can afford to buy an espresso-based beverage for yourself, buy one for us. Another reason Driftglass got mad this week is I ordered a pumpkin spice. And he just couldn't believe that I would order a pumpkin spice in August.
During a period of time that we can reasonably call our anniversary week. You bring this abomination into our home. I don't know what to say.
Yeah, my knitting girlfriend and I get coffee from a shop, and she brings it over. And I asked her to get pumpkin spice, and Driftglass went, "You did what?"
Next time, let me remain in blissful ignorance, Blue Gal.
Okay. This is not charity. This is our job. We love doing this podcast. So please share our show on social media. And if you love this podcast, please get someone else to listen to. And thank you for doing that. Hey, Driftglass, how are the internet kitties doing this week?
Well, Blue Gal, the internet kitties think that whether it's Trent Lott's home being leveled by Katrina or Hurricane Idalia throwing a 100-year-old oak into Ron DeSantis' mansion, maybe it's time for Republicans to take the effing hint.
Let's think about living.
Think about living.
Let's think about loving.
Think about loving.
Let's think about the hooping and the hopping and the popping and the loving, lovey-dovey. Let's forget about the wine and the crying, the shooting and the dying, and the fellow with the switchblade knife. Let's think about living. Let's think about life.
The Professional Left podcast is recorded under a Creative Commons license. Copyright 2023 DGBG Productions.